Welcome back. South Africa's new government of national unity has brought a wave of optimism, with international institutions upgrading growth forecasts and investors taking a positive stance. But the elephant in the room remains unemployment, which stands at a staggering 33.5%. To tackle this, drastic reforms are necessary. And joining me now to reflect on the government's 100-day milestone and explore strategies to address the country's high jobless rate is Colin Coleman, co-chair of the Youth Employment Service. Thank you so much for your time, Colin. Now, of course, over 100 days of the GNU being in power, how have you gauged the waters as it seeks to prove itself?
Well, there's no question that there is an uplift in the mood in South Africa and about South Africa, and that's very positive, and I don't want to pour any cold water over it. I do believe, however, that there are structural problems, fundamental structural problems that we need to face squarely, and those fundamental problems are going to require from us to accelerate our reforms.
Well, actually, what will be the GNU's measure of success or failure?
Well, I made a speech last week in my capacity as chairman of the Youth Employment Service, in which I suggested that both growth and its ability to bring down the unemployment rate is the ultimate measure, because with employment becomes income, improvement of standard of life, of the majority of people, and we have an expanded unemployment rate, effectively 12.5 million people not working, 16.7 million people working, which is materially worse than a decade ago. And in fact, over that decade, a net 450,000 unemployed have been added each year for the last 10 years to the unemployed. So we have to put our population to work. Productivity is the key to growth, and productivity per person is the key. So getting people to work and to get incomes is the key measure of whether this government of national unity is working for South Africans.
Well, it's quite interesting, Colin, because it's not like, even the private sector and, certain organizations and even government agencies, it's not like they're sitting on their hands. For example, there's ground that, yes, has covered as well. And I'm just wondering, I mean, you said in that speech that we are losing the war on unemployment. Would you say that even the tailwinds that we have made are just not enough to cover the losses that we've made due to the headwinds in the environment?
So I said that the forecasts for economic growth have improved from 1% to 1.1%, 1.6%, and 1.8% as the consensus economic forecast of the World Bank, IMF, South African Reserve Bank, and private economists over the next 3 years, which is below 2% growth, and that the consensus economic forecast required in order to start to effectively absorb the new entrants into the employment market is 3%. So to the extent we stay below 3% economic growth rates, we are not winning the war on bringing the unemployment rate down. And therefore, we need economic reforms to fast track our growth rate even further. We cannot sit on our hands and slap ourselves on the back. We need to consolidate and deepen our economic growth successes. And what I say there is the work being done on structural reforms to effectively overcome the obstacles of network industries and energy, transport, and so on, must continue. It's a necessary but insufficient condition for the growth I'm talking about. Second, that we need to look very carefully at our budget expenditures and basically reprioritize those budget expenditures through a zero-based budget process that basically looks at where can we save, where can we cut, and where can we expand our expenditures, and expand the expenditures on those things that have fiscal and social multipliers, like, for example, spending more money on SARS in order to get SARS to be able to expand revenue, the National Prosecuting Authority to be able to tackle corruption, and so on. We also need to look at our industrial policy to invest in productivity and in growth of manufacturing, and we should very carefully orchestrate a foreign direct investment campaign which to the top 100 companies in the world, which effectively brings more investment in dollars and in jobs into the economy from the world's biggest companies, and we should do that one-on-one. We cannot, as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs for 20 years, I can tell you, you can't do that in investment conferences. You have to go to the world's biggest companies, like an Apple, which is 8 times the market cap of South Africa's GDP, and have detailed discussions on what investment package will attract them to either assemble equipment or manufacture equipment in South Africa for the time zone.
That's actually very interesting that you talk about that going to specific big companies to actually look at the specific investment packages that would actually attract them. And I do understand that recently President Ramaphosa met with Elon Musk. Do you think that that maybe signals that we are actually starting to kind of go in that direction?
That would be an example that you need to sit down with the world's most important individuals and companies and say to them, and they can say to you, look, if you want me to invest in this country, this policy works, that policy doesn't work. I need to know the cost of labor, I need to know the cost of energy, I need to know the cost of logistics and our ability to get the African market to work. So we're not just talking about 60 million people buying my goods and products, but 1 billion people buying my goods and products. And to what extent can we actually export from the South African market for consumption or for purchasing by both African and European nations in the time zone? So it's really having a mindset that we're negotiating with these large corporates and individuals ways in which we make South Africa attractive for them and compete for their investment relative to other places.
All right. Well, we do have to wrap up the conversation there, Colin. Thank you so much for your time. And really, I guess the thread that comes out of this conversation and conversations that I've recently had is that as much as there is, progress that has been made on the reforms, but more needs to be done. Thank you so much for your time. That was the co-chair of Yes, Colin Coleman.